Welcome to On Air, the podcast from leading probate genealogists, Finders International, with your host, David Lockwood.
Welcome to On Air, the podcast from Finders International. My name's Dave Lockwood. With me is Danny Curran, the boss.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for that introduction.
That's all right. Danny Curran is the owner and MD and just the general guru that runs Finders International, company that's been formed now for 25 years. Mm-hmm. And Danny's been in the probate genealogist field for a number of years. I won't say how long, but because he'll throw his tea at me, and I don't particularly want to wear a shirt covered in tea for the rest of the day, but there we go. So that's basically Finders, the company and everything like that. We'll go through that in the podcast. That'll all come out. But as I said to you, and the listeners won't know this, but this isn't a dry podcast where we just look at the subject. We look at the person behind the subject and try and learn a bit more about the person and why they do what they do. So the first question, we have some set questions, and then I'll throw in a few other little curveballs. But the first question is, why a probate genealogist, Danny?
Well, I came into the industry through, actually, my father was a private detective in the 60s, and he started a company that evolved in 1964, which became Title Research, which is another probate research company. And then I started working there in 1990. For 7 years before I formed Finders. So there was a family connection there, although I was obviously fascinated by it all. And when I started working there, it was quite a small company. I think it's about 4 or 5 people there. And then I got into more of a kind of managerial role there. And then went my own way with Finders and started that, as you say, in 1997. So we're into 25 years now. This year's our anniversary.
19th of December.
19th of December. Yeah. Exactly. I remember the day.
Yeah, so do I for other reasons, but we won't go into that. I could never forget that one. Yeah. So when you first started Finders, I mean, what was it like? Was it you and other people? Or
it was me on my own. It was the other companies involved were bigger and more established, but there weren't that many of them. And one of the main areas of work that people have heard of because of the TV series Air Hunters that we did is the Bona Vacantia, the Treasury solicitor work, where they advertise. It's online now. So in those days, it was in the newspapers every Thursday in the Times, I think, and I can't remember.
And the Evening Standard as well.
Yeah, there were little. They put local ads. So like if someone died in London, they put it in the Evening Standard and the Times. If they died in Leeds, it will be in the Leeds paper. So anyway. I worked out that the other companies were a bit complacent, I think, by then. They had it all their own way and they were working 9 to 5. Most of them had a half day on Friday as well. So I thought, okay, here we go. And my first mission was to go up to King's Cross Station, where I worked out the first drop-off of the next day's papers were at midnight. So I went up to King's Cross at midnight, which was an interesting experience in itself. And I was only collecting papers. But then the van would pull up from the newspaper distributors, and I would literally get the papers off the back of the van and then go and sit in my car and have a look down, see if there was a list. I didn't even know there was going to be one. But in those days, quite handily, they put the values of the estate next to the actual estate, something which they've withdrawn because of fraud issues within their own department. Funnily enough, they had an issue with their own staff, so they decided to remove the values. Anyway, it gave me a focus. So then about 12:30 a.m. I go back to my office, which was basically a room the size of the room we're sitting in now probably, but that was the entire operation, with my microfiche reader. And if you imagine, like, you click online, you're searching Google or whatever online now, you're looking for a piece of information, the results appear in a few seconds, and then you scroll through and find the answers.
Yeah.
Every single microfiche, so say if I'm looking for a birth record, this is a genealogy lesson really, a birth record on microfiche, you don't know, the advert will tell you placed by the Treasury as to how old the person was. But I don't think they'd even said that. I think they said the date of death. So you had to kind of guess how old they might have been when they died, which meant doing a birth search, assuming that they might have died between age 60 and 100, to make sure you've got the right one. You don't know, it's all guesswork. So you have to kind of educated guess. You think, well, in that 40-year period, there's only, say, for example, someone was called Dave Lockwood. And in 1997, you're looking for his birth record. So you're going back potentially to 1900, and there are further complications genealogically there. So basically, in a nutshell, each search that takes 5 minutes now would take, substitute that for half an hour.
Wow.
And you would be there all night.
Yeah.
But I had a few lucky breaks early on, and I think I rather shocked my competitors one day, because after I found the people and rung them up, I would then drive out to see them, and hopefully they would happily go ahead and sign up, and I'd get a percentage, a year later or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's how I started. That was it. It was really simply grafting away, using kind of ninja tactics that I'd learned from where the weaknesses were.
Yeah.
It's the old strengths, weaknesses analysis, SWOT analysis.
Yes.
Yeah. So I swatted them. And I found where the weaknesses were, and obviously from my 7 years at Title Research, I'd also established a fairly loyal following of solicitors who worked with me on a lot of cases, and they decided very kindly to direct their work to me at my new company. And there we go, that's where we were. And it was a unique period in time. It was very, very hard, very hard. I was definitely working, I know people say this, I was working 7 days a week. I wasn't working 24 hours every day, but I was certainly working long hours. And I learned a lot from that experience about life, not just about running a business, because everything I did from then on, it was self-taught. I left school at 16 without any serious qualifications, just a few O-levels, and I went from there.
Yeah. So what would you, let's rephrase that. What would you do if you weren't a genealogist?
If I wasn't a genealogist, I have always been interested in sport, and I think I would definitely have been in the entrepreneurial bracket.
Right.
I don't think I could have ever. I worked for other people, and I usually got the sack. I remember once working for the civil service. I worked actually in Brixton Prison.
Really?
I wasn't actually in prison, believe me. I worked in Brixton and Wandsworth prisons in their records offices, which was fascinating. I think that kind of got me hooked on history a bit, because I read the records. I read Ronnie Biggs's record. That was one of the highlights. So Wandsworth Prison.
Yeah. Did you know I actually was on standby to do Ronnie Biggs's funeral at one stage as well? Yeah. Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And when did he die? Because he survived quite a long time.
He survived. He pulled through. They were quite surprised he pulled through. But he
got out of Brazil and then.
Yeah. When he was down in southeast London.
Oh, wow.
Down on the marshes, down at Belmarsh.
What was your job going to be?
Allegedly, if he passed away, then we were going to get the call and you deal with his funeral. It was going to be, oh great, okay, thanks.
Wow, because that's in your role with the council.
It was back in the day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating story. The summary of that record for me was that Ronnie Biggs was one of the country's most useless criminals, because he got caught for everything he did. His record was so long, it was like age 14, caught stealing plimsolls from Woolworths. And it went from there. Everything he did got caught. Yeah. So that never changed. But it was an interesting kind of historical record in a way, because it described in detail the escape.
Yeah.
He was actually not going to escape, because one of the officers had him by the leg, was pulling him back down the ladder.
Yeah.
And one of the other prisoners sort of rugby tackled the officer, and he allowed Ronnie to jump over the wall and onto the roof of the removal van.
It was the removal van, wasn't it? Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
So, my problem was that I had ideas about how to change things.
Yeah.
And I remember someone in the civil service saying to me, the problem is, Danny, that this is how we do things here. And, you can't just come in and change things. And I was as a young man, I was very frustrated by this notion that nothing could ever change. That's the way we do things.
Yeah.
So that taught me a lesson as well, because when I started my own business, I thought, well, okay, I've got to be open about how things are done. I've got to trust people.
Yeah.
That's bitten me a couple of times because people have, double crossed me or gone off and sort of betrayed the trust I put in them. But I've learned from those experiences, and like I say to my kid, what's the point of an experience if you don't learn from it? So, yeah, I went on to gain a few experiences there. I can honestly say I've learned from every job I've done, like whether it's a bar job in a nightclub for years, which I did. You learn how to handle angry, aggressive, drunk people, which actually translates into how to handle an argument or a dispute.
Yeah.
And it, I tried to, of course it was frustrating for many years, but once I got into that position of running my own business, I tried to do it. I've always tried. I've probably failed numerous times in numerous things, but I've tried to be fair and to be as kind and generous as I can to everyone that works with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's look at something slightly different. What makes you mad?
Well, intransigence is and arrogance. Oh my God! When you're talking to someone, whether it's you're on the phone for 2 hours to BT or whatever, and this is an interesting thing because I think psychologists always say, like, it's not wrong to be angry. It's wrong to go too far. Everyone gets annoyed. Everyone gets frustrated about something or other will push your buttons. But I think when you have someone who is so intransigent and so arrogant about what they do that they won't listen, and I've had this experience with my competitors in this industry where I've had ideas, they've not liked them and kind of dismissed them, and then when I've decided to push ahead and make my own decisions, then they just get furious with me, and that's why there's been a lot of friction in the industry. But I've always tried to maintain a business-like approach. So yeah, I can get on a professional level that kind of thing annoys me. On a personal level, I'm kind of a bit more laid back on a personal level. I don't get fired up about things as I would do on a work basis. So if my kids are annoying the hell out of me, I'll just try and be the typical dad who jokes his way out of the situation, and I leave all the bad cop stuff to my wife.
As probably
most men do.
Probably most of us do, yeah.
Which is a terrible thing to say, but I mean, I dropped my son off to school this morning, we had a good laugh, so yeah, that's the way it goes. And, I think it harps back to the lessons you learn throughout your life and how to use them.
You don't get behind a steering wheel of a car and suddenly become Captain Caveman.
No, because I had, this is a personal story. So I had a terrible personal experience with my son who got into a terrible scrape through a road rage incident. And that was a sort of few years ago. That was pretty tragic. So he survived, but he was... basically, he was stabbed, and he was one of the unlucky ones in London. But it came about through road rage. So that's completely changed my view of road rage. I actually have this new function on my car where it's called a limiter. Most cars have it, new cars.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do, because I live in the London Borough of Islington, which is not only has closed most of its roads now, also has a speed limit of 20 wherever you go.
Yeah. Oh, there's your phone.
Sorry about that.
That's your alarm.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I'll make sure I've got no more alarms. But anyway, Islington have this speed limit of 20 throughout their borough, and it's actually most of the way across London now.
Yeah.
So what happens is that I get into my car, set the limiter for 20, and that's it. That's the end of my... Driving is no longer exciting, I think, as we've established.
It can be if you're out in the wilds of the North York Moors or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're driving through Europe, I'd love to do that actually one day.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one thing I'd love to do, is to drive around France, Spain, Italy, and maybe that's a retirement plan for me. Aside from my Uber job, which obviously I'll be taking on immediately.
I can't imagine you as an Uber driver.
I'll be one of those sad Uber drivers. So I was a businessman. I used to be big, I used to be great. I made a lot of money doing this, that, and the other. Be one of those like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I think driving around Europe would be nice.
So that brings us on. What makes you happy then? So driving around Europe would make you happy then, or something?
Yeah, I mean, my wife's Danish. We spend a lot of time in Denmark. We've gone backwards and forwards there for 20-something years now. So I love going to our flat in Denmark. I love the family things that we do. It's always been very heartwarming. I'm lucky enough to have a lovely set of in-laws. And despite all the usual problems with family over the years, we've managed to end up in quite a good place.
Yeah.
And we have like an annual get-together, which is good round at my house. So, yeah, I think I like to see entrepreneurial spirit amongst youngsters. I'm trying to help with an FA, a lower league FA team. So we sponsor a team, and the guy who runs it is a real great kind of entrepreneurial guy. So I've got some plans afoot with that, so I might take that further.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's about inspiring youngsters with the experience of my son and helping them. These are young men aged 16 to 30.
Yeah.
Some of them are rudderless, some of them have got their own jobs or whatever. But we take the pressure off them, give them a nice new football kit, pay for all the subs, pay for all the fees. And so far, so good. Touch MDF. It's working so far. The first season of sponsorship, we were promoted.
Yeah.
And we're now top of the league in our second season.
You're top of the league.
We're going for double promotion.
Double. Wow.
That would be amazing.
That would be very
I know
good,
your
wouldn't
own
it?
fondness for football, Dave.
Yeah. Well,
You've got the well-worn look of a child.
yeah. When you've been relegated so many times in the past few years, you just get used to thinking, promotion. That's a nice
remember
thing.
that word?
I remember that word very well. But there you go. So that's doing well. I know that you bring people into mentor the team as well, though, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, in the first season we had Ian Holloway came along. He was fantastic. So
And Barking Mad as well, apparently.
Barking Mad, but very funny.
Yeah.
When he came along, he's in a park in South London. It's like the good old days for him, and he was just so he was there for about at the end of the game. He was talking to them for probably an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Just telling them, giving them life lessons. I mean, you can't change a team overnight, but you can inspire kids or youngsters on a game to game basis. So we did that. Then we had Marcus Gale, former Wimbledon player, now a lead scout, I think, with Brentford.
He's Brentford, yeah.
He does pre-match warm-ups for Premier League. And he asked 3 of our players to join the Brentford showcase team. So we have actually got some great players.
Good.
And if I can make 1 or 2 of these guys into professionals through my, not me personally, because I can't make that happen, but if they can become professionals, that would be a dream come true for me. That's and 3 of them now. One of them, 2 of them are playing for Aldershot, which is what are they?
National League.
National League. 2 of them have already been snapped up by Aldershot.
Wow.
And one of them by, I think, Epsom and Cheam, which is another higher league semi-pro club, I think.
Epsom, I'm not sure if they're not in the National League South, but I think they're below the National League South. So that's tier 6, 7 of professional football. I mean, we go down to tier 9, I think, in professional football, isn't it? Or something like that. Yeah.
And the idea, we're punching above our weight.
Yeah.
We've just had a really interesting experience. A 16-year-old lad who was dropped by a Premier League club from their academy. We have connections with a few clubs, like Crystal Palace is one of them.
Please don't swear.
And this guy was dropped, and luckily our manager of Active Sports, Josh, was able to talk to him, get him to come along and play.
Yeah.
What an amazing goalkeeper. He's just unlucky he's been dropped, and I think he'll be snapped up again in the next few years. He's only 16.
He's got a long way to go then, isn't he?
Yeah.
So 16-year-old, but having that mentality around him to help him develop, and because we're going off subject here, but talking about football, there are so many kids that are dropped by professional football clubs that at 16 years old, they've all their life, all they've known is
Exactly.
going through the academies and
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, and then to have that rug pulled from underneath their feet, it's got to be horrible for them, and it's got to be a real, kick in the teeth for them.
Yeah, and they could go the wrong way if
Yeah.
if they're not lucky enough to fall into something else that helps
Yeah.
them along the way.
Yeah.
So anyway, next week we have ex-Arsenal and England defender Nigel Winterburn coming along to take a training session.
Yeah.
And then to coach them through their game next Saturday. So that'll be a great treat for them as well. And what I want to do is kind of give them an insight. It's not that these guys are. Marcus Gale is more of a coach.
Yeah.
Nigel Winterburn has just got his experience to let
Yeah.
and
What a hell of an experience he's
Yeah.
got as well.
So if we can get a kind of a whatever year he was playing Arsenal with Tony Adams, I think he played with Arsenal.
Yeah.
If we can get a impenetrable defence out of that would be learn how to park the bus.
Yeah. Oh,
That would be fantastic.
parking the bus is fun, isn't it? It really is. Yeah.
It rarely works, but when it does, it's very
So
satisfying.
that obviously makes you really happy then.
Yeah,
So
I
you've
love
got
that.
some
It's
you've got some
interesting.
good things going on in life and their positives and everything like that.
Yeah.
So we said what would you do if you weren't a genealogist, but I've got to ask you, what is in your opinion is the most important personality trait or strength that someone would need to work in the field of probate genealogy for at your level, say?
Yeah, I mean, there's talking outside of entrepreneurial ventures generally, we're talking about kind of ideal employees. And I think if you're one of the first thing, I don't look for necessarily genealogical experience, although it's very good and very, if someone says, I've been doing my family tree and I've traced all these people, that's fantastic. But this is a slightly different industry, and you've got to be able to appeal to the people you call. A funny thing we've noticed in recent years is that the younger generation seem to be a little bit nervous of using the telephone because their lives are on the internet and on chat and on text messages and everything else. You tell them to pick up the phone and have a talk to someone and ask them about their family, and it's the nerves kick in. So it's about self-confidence, it's about common sense, and being really getting into something. And if they find that this world, which, we had a couple of new starters the other day, and I said, look, you're in an industry here, a unique industry where you've got a chance to change people's lives for the better. It might be bittersweet. You might have to talk about the death of a relative. They might have had a difficult life. The person that died could have had a difficult life. The person you're speaking to could have had a difficult life. But with all the proper training and the passion and the enthusiasm, you can, you're in a great position to. And as we're sitting here in a room surrounded by all my press coverage that I've had over the years, and people are fascinated by these stories. Pennies from Heaven, the great long lost auntie, uncle, cousin, and you suddenly come into some money. So it's a fascinating world, and I think the important thing, common sense, perseverance, just basic intelligence. I'm not after people that have got 3 degrees in different subjects. It's just really, are you into it? Can you make a difference? Do you enjoy making a difference in that way? Some people, it's not for everyone, but some people want a regular job where they know they're into IT or something specific, of course. But if you've got that basic interest in family history or history generally, this suddenly puts you in touch with years gone by, generations gone by, and you're suddenly part of that history and part of that story.
I mean, one thing that you did mention, obviously, was the fiches, and now we've gone onto the internet and everything is there now available. Does that make? I mean, obviously, it makes it easier to trace people. Does it also make it easier for people to turn around and say, "No, I'll do it myself now"?
In terms of proving your family tree, it's a double-edged sword, because what we're doing is part of a legal process, and what people forget sometimes is, I know I'm related to my cousin. And if I can prove it myself, I don't need your services. Well, that may or may not be the case, but it's a legal process. Yeah. And you have to prove who you are. And it's not just about an individual proving who they are. It's about proving there's not anyone else. Or if there are other people, where are they? You're not standing on your own. Okay, occasionally there might be a sole heir to an estate, but even then, they might be in a care home, incapacitated, no family of their own, no friends of their own, so they need help. They might just want to have nothing to do with the person that died. Yeah. So they say to us, look, you do it, I don't want to spend any money. So
Yeah.
we spend all the money.
Yeah.
We take all the risk. And if and when it works out, then they'll be paid.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand something. There is a lot of work, as you know, Dave, where things are written off because we find a will halfway through the process. We've spent thousands on research, and then we find a will leaving everything to literally to the cat's home or whatever, and we have to write off everything we've done. We might find that a family dies out and it goes to the Crown, then we have to write off everything we've done.
Yeah.
So it's a risk business, but this isn't all of our work. Obviously, we have a large tranche of work from solicitors that involves fixed fees or specific certain situations where we know that we're going to be paid for the work we do. But I'd say, a good sort of 40% of what we do is on a risk basis.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if anybody listening to this is approached by an air hunter, then at the end of the day, it's probably wise for them to let the air hunter do the search.
Yeah, because there's other things that come into play. Like I say, not only can they end up with nothing. If you go around trying to prove your relationship and buying documents and getting testimony and everything else from your family, only to be told 6 months later you're not going to get anything, then you might have racked up a couple of grand.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
And also, we don't often know what your final entitlement would be until right at the end of the process. We don't know if the deceased left debts, care home fees, all sorts of things. So what you think is a £300,000 estate might be reduced to less than 50 grand. And it happens regularly.
Yeah.
Obviously, more often than not, things work out. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business.
Yeah.
But we're providing a service. It's, as I say, it's done in a legally watertight way. So we're basically taking on the risk and the expense, and that's the consideration for people to think, do I want to get involved or shall I just let these guys do it? Most people obviously see what I would call common sense. I mean, if I was approached, I wouldn't want to get involved because it's a lot of work. But yes, I would say that, wouldn't I? But no, I mean, we're looking at a press article on the wall where a guy got about 60 pence, I think, because the family was so huge.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we've got all the articles around us and everything like that. And obviously, you have put yourself forward as the industry spokesperson, to talk up the industry. Now, we obviously spoke about the fact that you came in as a little bit of a disruptor, but now you're part of the establishment, aren't you? And you're there promoting what genealogy does.
Exactly, and a few years ago we started an international, because it's an unregulated industry. We started the International Association of Professional Probate Researchers, which is IAPPR.org, and it's about bringing together the heads of as many international companies as possible in this field, because it's quite a big, it's not huge, but it's quite a big industry worldwide. And what my aim is really is, although I think formal regulation in the UK is not going to be possible because the industry is just not big enough, no one's interested. If we can apply some self-regulation, some standards, codes of ethics, all that kind of thing, any kind of regulation is welcome. It'd be nice if we were all in the same association, but it's very hard to achieve that. So companies that want to be part of it can be part of it.
Yeah.
And we get together every year and have a chat about the industry. I've learned some amazing things about how this industry operates in, France, Germany, the USA, everything. It's been very, very educational.
Eyes open and all that. You just had the AGM, didn't you? I think
We did have the AGM at the wonderful Henley-on-Thames.
Henley-on-Thames.
Yeah, one of our, a friend of mine has a most bizarre job. He teaches croquet to octogenarians. So he goes to this building in Henley where they all meet up with croquet lawns.
Yeah.
Of course, the non-Brits there loved it. It was the most quintessentially British thing you could see, surrounded by croquet lawns and the River Thames on the horizon.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very strange, and that's a strange world to get into. But there sport for the over 80s.
It's over us both, let's say. Yeah. So wrapping up, what's the best advice you've ever been given?
Wow. It's very hard to look back at a 30-year career and think of one piece of advice. I think what I've heard and what I've learnt is that the number one thing is that whatever you're doing in life, if you're motivated by money alone, it won't work. You've got to be motivated by belief. I can't remember who said it to me or where I learned it or how I learned it, because my memory's not up to it. But I would repeat this advice to anyone: never, never, never look at the money. If your money is like water, you've got it in your hand, it'll squeeze, and hold it too hard, it'll disappear. Be motivated by what you love, what you want to do, the difference you want to make, the journey you want to go on. And it doesn't need to be money. It can be charity, it can be environment, it can be something that's just within you that you want to do. Motivation to be rich, I don't think works. It's just my view, but I don't think it does. And it never worked for me. My motivation was to run my own business. Yeah. And I liked probate research, probate genealogy and all that kind of thing. I loved doing what I was doing. The consequence of having now the largest company in the UK, from being a sole trader waiting in King's Cross for the lorry to arrive, is quite amazing. Yeah. But it doesn't. You don't. When these things happen, you don't kind of think, "Oh, aren't I great? Pat me on the back." It's just been the journey that I've gone on, and this is where we've ended up. And
kind of a natural progression.
It's been a natural progression, and it's been lovely.
So is there anything you would say to the 25 years ago Danny Curran, in hindsight, don't do? Or
yeah, I'd say don't worry. I would get very, very kind of upset about cases or things that went wrong. I think having that, but maybe that's the drive. When a footballer gets angry and gets sent off, they often talk about you need that passion. The managers will often say, well, yeah, he's like that, but you need that passion to get where you want to be. So yeah, I would save myself a lot of stress and say to myself, look, don't worry about it. Let it go. Move on to the next thing, because a football team never wins every single game it plays, and you have to be more professional, not get drawn into arguments, because that's what other people want. They want you to get sent off. That's why they kicked David Beckham and all this kind of stuff. They want you to get wound up. So, and I was very passionate, even more passionate when I was younger. So I just would let that get to me sometimes. So my advice to my younger self would be: don't let it get to you. Don't let the grind you down.
Right. That's darn good advice, I have to say. Danny Curran, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to On Air. We really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, as we'll be bringing you another episode next month. For more information on our services, visit our website www.findersinternational.co.uk or call us on 020 7490 4935.